welcome back to the Prosperous Empath. Kat here. I have something a little different to share with you all today on the podcast. I have very rarely had more than one guest join me on the show, and today I'm excited to have not one, but two highly sensitive entrepreneurs and empaths in love join me. I'm really thrilled to have Brandon Dewyea and Tim Sokol join me on the podcast. Brandon is someone who has been listening to the show for the past year, and we just organically built a natural connection, as we empaths tend to do. And she pitched me coming on the show with her partner, Tim, to talk about what it's like to be an empath with an empath in love. And that feels just so timely and relevant to talk about on the show, especially as we near the holidays, because in my line of work, something I so frequently see with clients is that our success in one area of life, whether it's in business, corporate leadership, the professional realm, is so often at the expense of our success in other areas of life, like our personal life, our relationship with ourself, our work-life balance, our healthy boundaries, our self-care. And so today's conversation is really a conversation about what it looks like to have it all in business and in love. And it's just such a delightful and authentic and organic conversation. You can hear the three of us interrupting each other at times because there's so much we want to put in. We have so many thoughts about this topic, and I really hope you enjoy it. So a little bit more about our guests. So Brandon Dewyea is an apparel stylist who works with individuals to help find their style and comfort with clothing. Tim Sokol is an entertainer using a variety of fun services as a way to connect both individuals and businesses together. As an extension of their relationship, Brandon and Tim strive to help both HSP and non-HSP couples with similar challenges in order to navigate this stressful yet manageable world we live in today. Together, they have created Empathically Yours, a joint venture that focuses on one or more people in the relationship having the qualities of a highly sensitive person and their methods of maintaining a healthy relationship for both individuals. It is such a delightful conversation, and I think I'll have to mention to Brandon that I always used to sign my emails Empathically Yours. So that connects. So let's see. So some of the topics we're going to dive into on the show today is we're going to talk about their journey of discovering their highly sensitive traits and how they have really leveraged their traits in their relationship to thrive and create balance. And we're going to leave you at the end of the episode with their most powerful practice to help them maintain that emotional connection and intimacy in the relationship. And what I really love about the practice that they share is that this is also a practice that I so frequently share with my own clients who are wanting a deeper emotional connection in their relationship. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Prosperous Empath podcast, designed especially for empaths and highly sensitive entrepreneurs just like you who are committed to achieving holistic success. I'm your host, Catherine Wood, Master Certified Coach, author, mastermind leader, and founder of Unbounded Potential, a boutique coaching firm for empathic entrepreneurs. I'm on a mission to bring empathy back into the world of business. Each episode will focus on achieving more by doing less through leveraging empath-friendly leadership practices, boundaries, rituals, and systems, all the while continuing to care deeply about ourselves, others, and the world around us. If you are committed to joyful living and running a conscious business, but amassing wealth while doing so, proving that you can have both in a society that tells you can't, then you are in the right place. Join me here each week to find out how. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so you won't miss an episode. Plus, you'll find all the show notes and helpful resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Hi, Brandon and Tim. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so thrilled to have you both here. I think the two of you are only my second time where I've had two people join me on the podcast. And last time they were business partners. So the two of you make my very first couple to join me on the show. And I'm really delighted for our conversation today.
Well, as are we. Thank you for having us.
Delighted to be here.
Let's see. So by way of introducing yourselves, I would love for you each to share your pronouns. And then, Brandon, you are really the impetus for us having our conversation today. So maybe I'll let you kick us off.
Okay. Well, she and her is great. Thank you for asking.
I've just been so inspired by you for the last couple months because you've been in so much communication and connection, and you've really kind of I want to connect with you. I want to share this with you. I think you should connect with this person on the podcast. And I've just been so inspired by your leadership. And so I guess I wanted to pass the baton to you to really share a little bit around your story and what inspired you to really want to come on the show to share.
I have been listening to your podcast for quite a while, and I think it's just amazing. And I think as empaths, we're really sensitive to all the things, right? So how is their voice and how do I feel when I'm listening to it? And is there something I can take away from it? Is there an experience and is it relatable? And so for me, you hit all the boxes, which was really important. And it's just been such a wonderful to experience you in that way. And having come off our personal journey, which of course we'll go more into with being empaths and a lot of just the personal and professional challenges that we've experienced, I just really felt like, gosh, we actually have some really wonderful nuggets to share and pass on to others in life and be in a relationship or other. And so I felt like we were beyond the point enough of our journey to be able to, you go through something and then you kind of come up for air and get your bearings and start healing. And okay, now I'm ready to talk about, let's do that. And pass it on. And I wish that had gone through some of our things that we had some more resources to pull upon. So I think there's something to be said for giving back. I think, thank goodness, more awareness is becoming brought to the surface around empaths and HSPs, resources. Thank goodness. And I want to contribute. And I think that it's power in numbers, and we all have to support each other on this journey. So yeah, reaching out because I believe in the work that you're doing. And I think that so many of us can look back in our lives and wonder, is that possible for me? Is that ever going to happen? Be it a relationship, business. I just think I think we've all been there to some degree at some point in our lives. And that can be sometimes just a really empty, low feeling and scary. And so that was another reason why I just wanted to reach out and say, hey, we're a little bit of something over here. What do you think? And is there anything in here? Would you be open to exploring, talking to me? And then, I've just been pinging you with, and what about this? And what about that? But I mean, in all seriousness, it's really cool to see other HSP networks. And oh my gosh, like how many wonderful collaborations. Because really, at the end of the day, we all need to move the needle forward, right? And spread more and more awareness. And we all need the support.
Totally. And I mean, I think that that's just such an important reminder that, when we're experiencing something in life and business in our relationship and not finding enough resources or mentors to follow, we need to bring our own voices. And then what a beautiful way to share what we learn by sharing it, by taking up more space. And Tim, I really appreciate you for just jumping in.
Well, you're welcome. As you know, when Brandon mentioned this to me, I immediately said yes. It was, again, our idea of sharing our journey, not having maybe the same support, and really wanted to push some of those ideas forth to others and help others. It comes from a really genuine and good place.
Yeah. Well, I think that was really self-evident from the first time I connected with the two of you. And one thing I really appreciated about chatting with the two of you the last time is just that dance between how the two of you maneuver through your relationship. And I think I may have mentioned this the last time, but just this lovely way that the two of you lean back lean forward and give each other space and take up space and create space and are responsible for your space and, apologize for interrupting one another and trying not to speak for one another. Like all of the ways in which the two of you so consciously are responsible for the energy and the space that you take up in your relationship is indicative to me of the work that you've done on your relationship. And that is what I am just so excited to dig in today, because I can't tell you how many members in my Unbounded Mastermind community have shared over the years, like, I just want my partner to do this work, or how do I get my partner on board? Or like, Kat, like how do I get my partner to understand that he needs to take responsibility or he needs to apologize or right? And it's very clear that the two of you are both mutually committed and really in it. And so I would love to hear what that journey has been like for you.
You hit it on the nail on the head, so to speak, with saying about work. It was work. It was not necessarily easy. I think we mentioned this even prior, is you have to have some uncomfortable conversations. You have to be willing to have some uncomfortable conversations in this. And that's part of it. It's part of having the communication, and it's not easy. And I don't think that I was necessarily, you had mentioned these wonderful attributes to our relationship and how we give those things forward. If you look back, so many years back into our relationship, it may have been there, but not all the way there. And so every year, every month, every day, I think we add upon that. And as we've gotten better at that and it's become easier, it's been such a wonderful path to take. It's so much easier to have that versus the way that we were doing things in a lot of ways. So in a lot of ways, I would urge couples I know that you have to go through some of these uncomfortable situations, but if you have those tools, you're going to find yourself in a better place years down the road. So,
yeah, if I could build upon that, I mean, we actually literally were there, and I'll have to figure out what year that was. I'll have to give that some more thought. But okay, even if that's on your nose, I should take it. I'm sorry. Had to do it. So we had a situation where we've been together 7 years, and Tim he has so many amazing qualities. And one of the wonderful things that I loved about him and still love about him is he gave me a lot of space to be me. And which just, I mean, my belly just like softens thinking about it. And I was so lucky to find somebody like that. And I also, as you stumble through life and you kind of figure out what's working, what's not, or maybe I want to try this or try that. I had some ideas of maybe some ways that we could implement some structure in our life that might help us on a couple different ways. And so I guess to me, if we take the emotion out of it, because I understand it to some degree, right? Regardless of what type of relationship you're in, you hear the word like, can we try this? Or can we work? Can we just talk longer and more often? It's like, oh God, how long is it going to last? It's going to be painful to talk about feelings and work and right? And at the same sense, in all honesty, if we take out the charge of it and the emotion of it, to me, if we really simplify this, is there another way that we could look at this and look at, like, if you look at all the things that come up in relationships, whether it's like, how are we handling the holidays this year? Or, the landscaping, gosh, we've been trying your guy and he's pretty good, but I feel like he's kind of dropping the ball on X, Y, and Z. Could we try this guy over here for a bit and then reevaluate? Like, could it not be something as simple as that in terms of not trying to simplify it, but in taking the charge out of it, of basically coming to your partner, which is what I did with Tim. Yeah. I said, could we try this? Like, I'm noticing X, Y, and Z kind of isn't working. I'm feeling a little frustrated. It seems like you're getting a little frustrated too. I have an idea. Are you open to trying it? And he was a little like, oh, all right. I mean, he was really supportive, but I could tell there's a little eye roll, right? But I kind of was like, let's just give it a go. And
there was an eye roll.
There was a
I mean, I saw it right now.
The cool thing was, in all honesty, I think it wasn't me saying, well, it's got to look exactly like this. Nope. And I'm sorry, it's the only way it's going to go. It really was like, let's just give this a shot. And if it sucks, okay. But we gave it, and the really cool thing that we were able to do, Kat, is we came together, we gave it a shot, and then we were able to which I think is extremely important in a partnership, is you're able to really break it down. Oh, what do we like about this? What's working? What's not? You know what? Can we throw this? Yeah, I don't like that. Let's throw that. Great. And now all of a sudden it became a partnership and something that it fueled us and helped us so much. And here's the other thing. I mean, really, what do you have to lose? Because I think at the end of the day, we all want to feel heard. We all want to feel validated. We all want to feel safe. And I think when we think of hard things, work, as Tim pointed out, the feelings that can bubble up are, do I feel safe to have a voice? Can I really say the hard things to you, right? Do I know it's going to be received, or are we just going to end up fighting? And that's, I mean, again, I recognize I'm simplifying a little bit, but those I think are some of the things that kick up, where if you can feel, that actually felt pretty darn good. Like we talked about some house, stuff, and how are we doing some logistics this week? We talked about some finances. We talked about some safe space stuff. I had to bring up some stuff with you that's been bubbling up for a while. So now you have accountability, you have structure, you also have some, it's not going to go on for 3 hours. So you're not feeling like this pain. And now all of a sudden you start to feel like, wow, I can rebuild my trust with this person, and I have a voice, and they've heard me. And now I'm feeling more and more comfortable to speak up about some of the hard things. And now I'm realizing, wow, when we don't do that, now we're really realizing like the effects of that, right?
Yeah.
And then you're able to come back together and say, well, what do you think? Is this working? Is this helping us, or is it hindering us? Yeah. So how does that sound? Does that feel?
I mean, there's so much of what you've said that I really love. But one thing I just want to call attention to, and I guess I'm curious if you're familiar with Marshall Rosenberg's work, the nonviolent communication method,
Yeah. Sure.
Because you just hit the nail on the head with what that looks like, right? It's like, rather than leading with our complaints, we lead with our observations around what we're genuinely noticing and how it makes us feel, and then what potential need we have, and it sounds like what need you also perceived in Tim, and then making a genuine request. Like, I just feel like that's such a lovely example of nonviolent communication in action, because I really hear how in that moment of noticing what wasn't working about the landscaping, that you really just led with curiosity and partnership rather than leading with your complaints or critiques, that rather than, making Tim feel like a welcome partner who could come to the table, he might have felt, chastised or criticized.
Yeah.
Or wronged in some way, which I think is often how it goes with high ambitious partners. This isn't working, right? But people hear it as not, this isn't working. We hear it as, you're not working. You're doing something wrong, rather than, hey, I noticed something. Can we talk about this?
Yeah.
Very different energy.
If I may add to the perspective, the male perspective, as you mentioned earlier, and maybe the difficulty around that. And a lot of that goes on with what we're taught in society, how we're sharing our feelings. Is that manly? Are you allowed to do that? Are you gonna be looked upon a certain way? With your other peers, it's something. Well, I can't tell other peers that, or my other gentlemen friendly, because that's not good. I can't share my feelings. It's not about that. It's about respecting your partner's wishes. If they're asking for something, if I ask something of my partner, I would hope that they would be open to it, as she would be open to my things. It has very little to do with that, but I think that overshadows a lot of things. I think that we talked about a lot about men don't cry, men don't share their feelings, and it's not necessarily true. I think a lot of when males hang out together in a situation, it's not going to be like that always. There's a very machismo or a very kind of a thing happening there, but and it depends on your groups, and maybe I'm speaking in generalities, but that's a big part of it. I think that's another layer to get through. Speaking to that point, and it becomes, I think what we're taught in society, a lot of it.
Well, Tim, I'd love to dig in a little deeper there, because, something I know about you both from our last meeting is that it sounds like it wasn't always this way, that there was really kind of a moment where you consciously started partnering differently.
Yeah.
My intuitive sense is that this was kind of led by Brandon, although I'm not 100% sure about that. Is that true? Let me check in.
It is true.
Okay. Well, I think that's, in my experience, in my experience, that's often how it goes. It's typically the kind of the female identifying energy that brings, hey, like, I'm noticing something, let's create something different. And I am curious from your perspective, Tim, like, what did Brandon do well that had you receive her needs, her desire for reinventing how you do things in your relationship so openly? Because honestly, I think that is like the golden question for my clients. Like, they want to know, like, how can I talk to my husband in a way that he hears my love and my desire for partnership and not that he's doing anything wrong?
Right. Well put. I think a lot of it was doing things not all at once. It wasn't, she didn't throw on me, we need to do this, we need to do that. I think it was gradual. And that was the best way to approach myself, was let's try this. And we'll be getting into something that we wanted to share with you, with something we call our weekly check-in. And it started off small. Started off with one or two items that we can digest, we can work on, we can see if it was working for the two of us. That's how it worked for me. It's how I was able to, there was some eye rolling. Is this really going to work? Is this kind of, is this one of those just things? But I also had to realize maybe this is the reasons why my previous relationships hadn't worked, because of that communication and because of getting into some things that deserve further conversation. And when are we going to have those conversations? Because if you look at your daily life, if I look at what I'm doing, and if I don't schedule that time in, when is it going to happen? And I think a lot of couples can speak to that. If you're not going to have those conversations about what happened, oh my God, you just, I'm going to give an example that doesn't relate to us, let's say you woke me up in the middle of the night, you do it every single time. What happens with that if that keeps on happening, it keeps on snowballing? What does that affect at the end of the day? If you're going to keep on building with that, it's going to end up blowing up at some point in time. And that's what usually happens with, I think, couples. Things build up because we don't talk about them. We don't want to talk about those things. Maybe it's difficult to say, I don't want to hurt my other partner. If I say that, does that mean that I'm saying something about our love? That's an important thing too. I think a lot of couples don't distinguish the two of them. You can have an uncomfortable conversation. You can say some things that are pretty uncomfortable, but how do we do that? When do we do that? And I definitely want to get into that sooner than not, but
I think it started with the safe space thing. That was the start. And I think that was really,
that was the one item.
I don't remember the other one that we started with, but I think it was, because one thing that was happening for us is we would try to wouldn't necessarily feel like a big thing to maybe me that I bring up, or vice versa, but they're like walking by, they're getting out the door, and you're like, I can't handle this right now. Like, I need to go, right? Timing, right? Yeah. Being able to receive the information, how we say it, how we receive it. And so that was a big catalyst for us starting. And so I think that felt, well, in all fairness too, Tim was like, do we have to talk about everything? We spend so much time talking. And we did, but it was like,
I actually remember something. I actually remember this other part where we would be in the kitchen, for instance. I'd be making myself breakfast and she wants to talk about something that is a little bit difficult. I'm like, no, let me eat first. How about that? Or let me make something first. Or whatever,
Because I've been up for 5 hours.
Exactly.
She's been thinking about it. And I used to joke with her. This is a funny thing.
You look at me and be like, what time did you get up? How long has it been?
She's been up for hours. Been thinking about it. And the funny thing, Kat, is, and we talked about this, and I hope I can share. I can share this without her feeling this way. But there was moments when she was not saying good morning, and we were talking about this, about saying, please pause. And it's the intention of just saying good morning. It's saying good morning. It's saying hi. It's saying something. I said, don't just jump into, because her mind is, it's racing. It's thinking about those things. I woke up. I'm like having my coffee. I thought about this. Let's solve it. Nope. Stop it. Stop there. And I didn't also realize too, my journey as being HSP has been a lot different than I noticed other people, or a lot of other people that have heard in their stories. My journey became a lot less through readings and identifying. It was identified more through Brandon and actually through her mom, where, you're an HSP, I think. And I'm like, I don't know. That doesn't sound good. Is that like some sort of a disease? I don't want to have that. So no, I don't have I'm not an HSP. But reading further and looking into some of it, and again, I practice more of it than I will be honest, more than I read about it. Checking off those boxes and saying, yeah, that makes sense to me. I'm an HSP because of these different things. That resonates with me big time. And I did a little bit of a squirrely move there, and I want to get back to what I was talking about, but I don't know if I'll remember that.
Well, in terms of how it worked for you with being a guy receiving, what is the thing that could be said?
Getting back to our conversations, it became more of that. This is not the proper time for this. Let's get back to a proper time. So then it became a back and forth. So I think the conversation started there, but it went back and forth and how it's going to work for us. No, that doesn't work for me. Don't approach me then. Now we just came, oh my God, let's come up with 1 day a week. And then it became, let's add to that. That's going to be helpful. Boom, boom, build. That's just not overnight.
I love that, Tim. Honestly, I could have put my details from my relationship into your mouth, and it is the exact same dynamic as the two of you. I get up at 5 a.m. My husband gets up at 7, 8, he doesn't sleep in late, but I have 3 hours of exquisite self-care and my morning routine and prioritizing me and the dogs. And I feel ready and grounded and present and like ready to take on the day by the time he wakes up, and he just wants a kiss and a cup of coffee and a good morning. And I think a theme that I hear both of us speaking to is this idea of consent. Like we have to create consent in our relationships where we're both on the same page, ready to jump into a conversation, available for hearing someone's to-do list or requests of us or complaints or needs or desires or preferences, any of it.
Yeah.
It's almost like we were speaking a different language in some ways, and we had to get on the same page with that. And it was being uncomfortable. It was saying some of those things that I didn't want to say. And believe it or not, I even found even more boundaries after this past year where, maybe it's driving her crazy a little bit in some ways. Like, oh my God, this guy found his voice. Now I need to put a cork in it. No, I'm just kidding. But really, it was finding some of those things, and it became uncomfortable for me. I'm still struggling with it. I am still struggling with some of the things that I say, but I'm not afraid to say it either. And again, if I say it the wrong way, they'll let me know about it in our safe space. So that's really important.
Well, if I may too, I think one thing that's like the good morning thing that you were saying.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an interesting dynamic because I remember just feeling like, did I not say good morning? I felt like a little like, did we cover that? But it was actually, in all seriousness, really helpful to hear. He's like, I need to connect with you. Like that just grounds me. I need to hold you for a minute where I'm like, but I got it. Yeah. And it was really, and I was like, okay, that's important to him, where I already felt connection to him. And I was so proud of him that he articulated that. But in all seriousness, I actually had to write it down on something that I need to pause. I need to connect with it. So that went on. That was an example of something that went on our weekly thing. I needed to see it. And then he needed to see that I was working on it. So I could look at that and say, how am I doing with that? Have I been improving like any of us, right? Did you put the toilet seat down or whatever? There's all those things in our relationship that come up that we all want to feel like, do I matter? Are you working on this? And having some of that structure in place allowed us, okay, the pressure's off. I'm here. I'm ready to talk with you. I'm ready to connect. I'm ready to receive something that might be a little challenging for me to hear, but I recognize it's important to you. So let's get into it, right? Mm-hmm. And let's talk about it. And no, we're not leaving, no, there's no distractions. We don't have to get out the door. Like we are present. We're also going to have some structure and realize that we're not going to be here for 16 hours talking about this. Yeah. And we're also going to get stuff done. And there's been times that it hasn't gone as well, and it's a hot mess. But you know what? We did it. We came together and we connected, and we were able to work through it.
We may have gotten through one topic, for that matter, and it blew up. And I know specifically, I was the cause of that. We start off. If I may bring up a couple of those topics, one of us is we start off with emotional check-in, and I think it's so important that we start off with emotional check-in, whether we have one or not. It may be very brief. It may be very long. I may have gone through something and letting her know right away. And that may take up the entire conversation, and it blew up and this is not working. Let's let's take a pause on this. Let's push this forth another time. And we intentionally do those things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's worked out great. And by the way, I'm so happy to say that it doesn't make me feel like I'm alone in this world, to hear that same dynamic with you and your husband in the morning and all of that.
Totally.
So that's
And
great.
just to normalize it, like I actually think that that's really normal for empathic, highly sensitive couples, because we're high achievers. We're very ambitious and driven, and our minds race, right? We have highly fast operating minds, and the way in which we process information is different. Like I process information the best in the morning time. In the morning time, I am the most clear about everything that's outstanding in my mental or physical to-do list that there is to get done. And so that's just my tendency. But learning how my husband processes things differently has been a huge success principle for our marriage. And honestly, that made me want to bring up this beautiful practice from the book, The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. I'm not sure if either of you are familiar with that book, but it's a lovely book with very kind of bite-sized success principles from his work. And he shared a couple that have been hugely impactful for me. Actually, I'm not sure if I've ever shared this. So one of his success principles was one Thanksgiving, he decided to write a journal entry to his wife every single day about something that he appreciated her for, or something that he was grateful to her for because she shared some feedback with him that she didn't feel appreciated. And that really hit home for me because my husband has shared that with me as well. And so 2 years ago, not even 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I took on that practice, and I wrote him a journal entry every single day for a whole year. And I gave it to him earlier this year on his birthday. And it was so impactful for me because I think when we reorient our mind towards what we appreciate, what we love, rather than what's missing or what we need, it just rewrites the energy flow. And there was a huge shift in my relationship. Nothing that was said, right? It was just simply a reflection of me being differently in the relationship. So that's one of the success principles that I personally use. And then the second one is also from his book. He does a simple check-in with his wife. Again, I love when authors use personal examples, especially when they're some of kind of the greats in the personal development field, right? But a second practice that he has is just to check in every day with his wife on a scale of 1 to 10. How am I doing in our relationship? And then she gets to rate him, right? Rate his efforts. And then if it's not a 10, the follow-up question is, what do I need to do to make it a 10? And I was reading this book on vacation, and I checked in with my husband that day, and I think he gave me a 8. And I asked him, what would make it a 10? And he's like, I think if you made me more of those sandwiches that you made me yesterday.
What's sweet about that too is, huge, right? It's monumental. But I also think what's really great about that is his last 2 points. It could be anything, right? But the fact of like, oh my gosh, if I could just have some of those sandwiches, like it's in fun. It's also like it feeds him really on so many levels. And it's such a small gesture where we can go into thinking it's going to be huge, right? Or he's going to ask me to do something just gigungous and impossible, where it's like, really? That would do it? Well, that's cool. And it just starts to build up your self-confidence, right?
Yeah.
So much more. So I think that's so cool. Yeah. I need to read that book.
It's so in line. Absolutely. We'll add it in the show notes. So if anyone wants to find it, they can find it there. But it's actually really in line with your example also. Tim shared that he just needed a good morning in the morning. And it's like those things that we need, we overcomplicate them in our head, or we make them so difficult in order to meet our partner's needs, when in reality, when we can gain that facility within ourselves to be able to distinguish what we need and then trust our partner with those needs, we are setting ourselves up to get more of our needs met.
Yep. Yeah. Well said. Well said. Absolutely.
So is it okay, Kat, I don't want to miss out on the opportunity to go through, if it's okay with you, if you think that's something that would be helpful, because you touched on the acknowledgments, and we actually have that on our check-in, and it is our second item on our list, and it's very important for us because it's in real time. It's for that week, and it could be you don't have anything, but it's an idea to share. Maybe it's an acknowledgement of my own self. Hey, I'm sharing a win. I'm going to say that I never used to really do that a lot. Never used to share my own wins. It was more like, hey, I really appreciate you for doing this, that, or the other thing. Instead of saying, you know what, I appreciate myself for stepping outside of my comfort zone, or doing something that made me feel uncomfortable, but I did it and I had that success, and that was amazing too. So, or maybe we don't need to hit every single item, but it was just the idea.
Can we just back up? So is that the second step on your weekly check-in? Or is this a daily check-in that you also have?
This is weekly. We do this weekly.
Yeah.
And we actually added the emotional check-in because if it's okay to share, and I guess you can
Please,
slot me later.
No, I would love for you to
Well,
go
I was just
through
going to
those.
say,
That'd be awesome,
we had a start, and then we added the emotional check-in because one day we started talking, and as HSPs, right? We are feeling before we're there, right, in our bodies. And Tim just lost it, and he was just like, I don't know what's happening. And he started crying. He was like, I think I need to, wow. And that's when we start adding in the emotional check-in. Do you remember that day?
I was actually taking in a lot of grief. My father had passed. And I think as that happened, that's where I was at. I was thinking of my dad that day. So I was already, you could have probably said anything, good or bad, and I probably would have just lost it because I was thinking about him. So as we're trying to do all these things, we're going into acknowledgments, and we're going over our week's focus and intentions.
You just couldn't go there.
I couldn't even get past that.
But it was so helpful for me to know that. Like, let me know what's going on with you, right? Like, how are you feeling? Are you grounded? No, I'm bloody anxious. I'm this, I'm that. Like, just allowing yourself to know what's going on with your partner's energy, and then also like what's coming up for them too. What's on your mind? What stresses are happening at work, or where are you feeling inadequate, or where are you feeling excited? Or, I mean, it's just, I think a lot of times we can just be passing ships in relationships. Yeah. And we also don't have children, right? Like, I mean, you throw that in the mix, and I mean, it's like, it's busy, and entrepreneurs. Yeah. Which has been really helpful, not to take away from what you were saying and get off point, but I think as entrepreneurs too, it's really helpful to be able to hold each other to our greatness. And what are your focuses this week? What are your wins? Where are you challenged? What are you working on? Where do you maybe need some accountability or structure? So it's definitely a morph of a lot of things. But again, I think that also can be applied to people who are not both entrepreneurs or what have you.
I mean, absolutely. But
even just supporting your partner, right? What do you have coming on?
Getting at the time. Where do we fit this in? Well, it doesn't matter about entrepreneur now. I think I threw that in there because that was important to mention, but it's just the idea of, where do you fit this in a day? And if you don't create safe space time, when are you going to do it? Probably never, if you don't actually intentionally create that thing. And if it does, it's probably going to come on bad timing, like in that morning time when it's bothering you and you've been thinking about it for 3 hours, and I wake up and I'm having my coffee, or vice versa, and then you spill your guts. And is that productive? I wasn't ready to receive it. She's throwing it out there because she thinks it's helpful. She wants to get off her chest. I'm not ready to receive it, and that's not going to work. Simply not going to work.
Hitting pause in this episode for just a moment to tell you about my absolutely favorite way for you to experience a taste of our work with ambitious empathpreneurs in our Unbounded Mastermind, the only community we know of that is exclusively for emerging and established empath entrepreneurs. To get high-level support from me, my co-coach, and our tight-knit community of values-aligned peers to finally step into your quantum next level. Each month, we host an intimate, non-networking power hour within our mastermind community for you to have a behind-the-scenes experience of what it's actually like to be supported in our community. Join us for our next event, the final one of the year, on Monday, December 11th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time by jumping on over to the show notes for this episode and grabbing your spot at unbounded-potential.com/podcast. I'm dying to hear more about this weekly check-in. I mean, my coach's ears are ringing, right? Because this is actually, and I didn't share this with you previously, but this is a practice that I offer couples, clients who are wanting to deepen their relationship and intimacy with their partner. This is a practice that I call a state of the union, where we get to talk about a state of the union, the relationship. So my questions are, how do you create the safe space? And are there kind of ground rules or foundational steps that you've learned with time to ensure you have a productive and connecting weekly check-in?
Yeah. Do you want me to take this one, or you want to go for it?
Go ahead. Yeah, I'll add on if
I think that when the conversation originally came up of we're some type of safe space could be helpful for us. The intention, what we kind of, the ground rules were it's one benefit that I want to speak to, because I think this is easy for us to forget. You can be so charged in the moment of something that's just really pissing you off, right? And there's something to be said for like how maybe let it document it, but then by the time comes of when you're going to have your check-in, does it still bother you, right? Is there still that charger? Is it worth it? Were there other things going on with you that maybe can help to diffuse it or give you some clarity? And of course it's about taking ownership, right? What's my stuff in this, right? Am I just reacting, or is there something deeper? And as HSPs, we know that we're ruminating and thinking and feeling all the time. And so taking that extra time to really sit with it is really helpful. And it does everybody, I think it does a disservice for us not to.
Yeah.
In answer to your question, the safe space, when I don't remember obviously verbatim what I said, but when I broached the subject of the safe space, it was really coming from that place of the point of doing this is so that we recognize there might be some hard things for us to bring up, and coming into that space of non-competitive, being open, know that this is coming from a loving place. This is hard for me. This is vulnerable. This is hard for me to bring up. I'm feeling really uncomfortable right now. This is sensitive for me. Really using that language and knowing that it's already hard for me to articulate this. So please be tender, right?
Yeah.
Please put your compassion, gloves on and hold the space for me. And so we've been, when working that language, that really helped us, because it took the pressure off, and just knowing how hard it is for your partner to bring something up. And then also to notice some of the things that, like, as an example, he's brought up or I brought up with him, and you're kind of sitting there going, wow, that was that hard for him. Like, it just makes you feel so much compassion, right? Like, I'm so glad he brought that up. Oh my gosh, let's get in there. Let's talk about it. Yeah, thank you. So I had no idea I was doing that. Or thanks for letting me know. And it just pulls you in, right? And there's times that something's brought up and you're like, oh, you feel prickly and you feel defensive, but you're like, okay. And then there's times that something's brought up, like that even happened to us this morning. We sat on the floor, we did our morning check-in, and it got a little intense and emotional. And I reached out my hand and to grab his hand and like, let's just ground each other. I feel like I'm gonna start crying, and like, okay, let's just get through this. Like, what do you want to say right now? And then there's been some times where it's like, this is feeling a little bit bigger than I feel that our time has for today. Could we come back to this? Could you, this is important. I want you to know this is important for me to hear this, but could we come back to it? Would that be okay to do? Can we save this for next week or what have you? Also feeling okay to do it. Because I could feel my stomach like getting in knots. I'm feeling a little stressed about the time. I'm getting a little hungry. Like, I don't know that I'm going to be able to receive this and really give you my best to be present in this conversation.
Yeah. And it prevents us from, I think we should just coin this term. This is, I think, our term, the virtual strangle, where you want to take your partner and go like this, or she, I think, playfully said, push it down the stairs. but no, just a little bit. But I said the strangle, she said the push down the stairs. So we're even. But yeah, so we don't get to those points of feeling, like, hey, this wasn't all right. And we're not going to always connect on those points. It could be something from like, hey, you're making a clicking noise. Stop that, to something that's really hard. So we have everything on there for the safe space. And a lot of times recently, I have noticed that I want to sit with those things. I don't always want to bring them up because I want to see how I feel in another, few days, a week. If it's still bothering me, maybe within that day or next day, and I'm upset or something, I would like to bring it up even sooner. So the check-ins are there for a weekly check-in, but it's not like, hey, we keep to a weekly thing. If it's really going to bother me, I'm going to bring it up in another way, but it's going to come up in such a way that I know that I don't want to be brought up in the, just any point in time during the day. It's got to land well then too. So it's creating another space, and it's just being really intentional about doing that.
I so appreciate both of your vulnerability and willingness to have this conversation with me, because I think you're speaking to topics that are so important and so useful. And you just shared an example, Brandon, that I think speaks to such a common challenge in relationships, and this idea of like, how can we set our clients up to hear us open-heartedly? And one of the examples that you just so beautifully shared was like, hey, this is really hard for me to communicate. Please be tender with me. Please, like, bring your compassionate listening. This is hard for me to say, right? It's like, simply by creating that container for whatever you're about to say, you are already supporting Tim in supporting you. You're already presencing him to, okay, I need to be empathetic here. I need to be able to listen. I need to, really try not to make this about me or take it personally. And, we're humans and we're sensitive. So we're deeply feeling oriented, right? So we're preconditioned to take our partners personally, right? So you're welcome. And by simply saying, hey, this is going to be really hard for me to share, you're already supporting him in not taking whatever you're about to say personally, which I just think is gold. And then also creating that loving out for yourself. Like, hey, I know you need more from me in this conversation. Like, I don't think now's the time. Maybe my energy's not right, or I'm hungry, or we don't have enough time right now, especially with busy entrepreneurs, right? And it's just so lovely. There's just permission and compassion on the front end and on the tail end.
Yeah.
And there's also,
thank you.
We start the conversation first. So it may not go like you had said. It may not be solved in that moment. It may be the next week after that where, hey, we got to put a pause on this. Is it okay to put a pause on this here? Or, listen, I can't take anymore. I'll just be honest with you. Let's just end this, because it's not going to end up in a spot where we want to end it. And we want to make sure that we're also being, sensitive to each other in that frame. So it's not about solving it in that moment. In fact, sometimes we try in a very general sense to form like, hey, listen, let's talk about this for the next 15 minutes. Anything over that, I think we're going to end up in World War II. So let's try to keep it within a certain parameter. Nothing's perfect. Again, our list was built because of what our needs were. And we actually think that our list could be a great model for other couples. That being said, there's going to be some tweaking with other couples. Other couples may say, no, that's not important to us. We don't need to talk about that. I would probably, argue on some of those, but for the most part, you're going to come up with your own system, your own, because every relationship is different and you have different things that are important to you.
So we're recording this on a Monday. So do you have your weekly check-ins every Monday morning?
We do. Yeah. We've noticed that if we don't do it, like there's been times, because again, we're busy entrepreneurs, right? Things happen. We have learned that if we don't do it, we start to not feel as connected, and then other things start happening, and that affects everything. And so it's not to sound dramatic, but it really has been a massive, and that's been also good for us, right? By contrast, wow, we're really realizing that's just not negotiable, isn't it? Yeah. And there's been times where we strive for 10-15 every Monday. There's been times where maybe moved it to 5 or something, but in general, it's happened enough times where we've tried to be like, let's just squeeze this in. Can we do it Tuesday? Yeah, it's Tuesday. Yeah, sure. And all of a sudden something happens, and then all of a sudden a week goes, and it's just not worth it. Like we've just learned that we really need to stick to that as much as possible.
I think a lot of that was the safe space talk. It's making sure that we have that, because I don't want to be upset with her with something that I couldn't figure out. Mm-hmm. I really want to know the answer for. I don't want to be general with guys. I want to know, question, answer. Sometimes there's some fluff in between. I want to know what I'm doing wrong or what I'm doing right, or not even that. That came out wrong too, but it's just the idea of, let's figure out something here. And if not, then I'm going to be thinking about it all week, and I'm going to be ruminating. And then my thoughts are going to, go out of control. I don't want that. I don't want that for anyone, because then that's going to affect other people in my life. And my business is built on, keeping, or putting smiles on people's faces. And so in doing that, I want to make sure that I'm always, level in the way that I am. So I'm not feeling, man, I'm going to this event, but I'm not feeling good. And that doesn't feel good. I want to make sure that I'm going knowing that I've talked to her about some things. And if it's in that moment and we're leaving, let's say for an event, and I'm still feeling that way, that at least I know that support that, hey, we're going to talk about this tomorrow. I can put this on the shelf. I'm okay. We're good. Let's move. Yeah.
So I wanna hear if there's a certain time that you allot for your weekly check-in, and then I'd love to invite you to walk us through every component. And I know that you're going to share it with us to include in the show notes so that our listeners can grab or download their own copy, which I'm sure will be greatly appreciated. But walk us through it.
10:15 a.m., Kat.
10:15. And how much time do you schedule?
We try to keep it to an hour as best as we can. But to be honest, there's a couple weeks that we missed. We're moving my mom and everything, and it ended up being 3 hours because things accumulated, and that was a doozy. So we try to keep it to an hour. We've noticed that if we are doing it every week, usually a half hour to 45 minutes, sometimes an hour is a good. We can accomplish a lot, and if we're doing it consistently, then we're all set.
Love it.
We had one meeting. I just have to share this because I thought it was funny. We had one meeting where it went really long, and we were so emotionally exhausted by all this that we took time off for ourselves. We made it not a bed day, but it was kind of let's relax. Let's kind of still be in each other's space, but let's just bring the temperature down. Let's make sure that we're still loving and we're still remembering why we're in a relationship, because there's a lot of heavy things that were happening. And so let's give ourselves some of that space. We had tons of things to do that day, as we always do, but hey, this is more important, because if we don't do this, we're not going to be okay for tomorrow. Our tanks are going to be depleted. Let's fill up our tanks, because I think as HSPs, we always need to have that time to fill up back our tanks. I know I definitely need that for my events, so I can feel like I'm productive and I'm funny and I'm whatever. If we don't do that and we don't save it, then it's kicking the can down the road, and it's going to just hurt us later. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
So shall I run through what our are? Okay. And again, this is just a suggestion we found what works well for us. And so a lot of this, of course, is self-explanatory. So I created a simple sheet. I gave it to him. Again, I think everyone has to come up with their own style, but we start with the emotional check-in, which we've kind of already covered. Then we go.
Are there prompts? Are there prompts that you share with the emotional check-ins or anything like that?
Yeah, we've kind of just what we try to do separately is fill it out ahead of time, and that might be an hour before, days before, just
5 minutes
preparing. Sometimes
thanks for keeping it real.
We're human. We're human at the end of the day. We're a human couple. We have our faults, but that's what it's all about. Anyway.
Absolutely. So yes, not necessarily prompts, because we've been doing it for a bit, right? But the emotional check. Yeah. How am I feeling? What's coming up for me? Gosh, I'm feeling really stressed about this meeting that I have coming up. I'm really upset about that argument that I had with my brother yesterday, or just where are you at? Right. And just giving us a chance to kind of ground. And usually we have found it works pretty well. It's to one person kick off. We just kind of whoever wants to go. And then we'll usually do maybe 2 segments, and then we'll switch over the other person. So for instance, the first one would be emotional check-in. The second one is acknowledge, if there's any, and it again, like Tim said earlier, it doesn't mean you have to put something in, maybe I'm not feeling like I have anything to acknowledge about you, right? But in all seriousness, what you were bringing up with your husband as the example, it does help to kind of ground me. What am I appreciating about Tim? I am appreciating that he did blank. And that just makes me feel so loved that when you do this, and I want to acknowledge how hard you're working through this thing. And so it gives us both a chance to kind of be present, or thank you so much for supporting me with that thing last week. That was so hard. And so it's just creating that space. Right. And then usually we'll go into my week's focus and intentions. So just allowing us to kind of figure out, what do you have coming up this week? What are and so that can tie in a little bit of accountability, focus. I think it can also help. Sometimes I've noticed in relationships, we can get snarly, right? Is he even doing what he said he was going to do? Or, that's been sitting there for 5 weeks and he still hasn't done it. We can make all these stories up, right? yeah, if we can understand what's coming up for our partner and what their focus is, and what's just where they're at, where's their energy, and that I think can just again give us the opportunity to have more compassion, right, and understanding what they're going through. And then we have a section for financials, so it just talks about like what's coming up, what are we, anything, right, trips, house repair, anything we need to check in on. Hey, did you follow up on that thing? I'm working on this. Also, courses on entrepreneurs. It's a great. We're talking about our finances, right? Keeping that energy around money positive, and hey, we're so excited about this coming in. I'm working on that and this, that, whatever, right? Feeding it versus being a negative, if you will. And then we shift to items to address. So that could be anything from like, hey, what's going on with the smoke alarms to, well, what are we doing with the holidays? Like, where are we at with that? What are we doing this year? So it's random stuff that can accumulate. And then we go to safe space. And safe space is, we've kind of talked about a little bit today. Yeah, I got some stuff to bring up with you, or no, I don't, or the list is long today. Let's, sit down and get settled, right? But in all seriousness, it's not, if we're chipping away at this each week, then you're also not having all of these things accumulate. And also, I think sometimes it's feeling into it. Maybe I put something in my phone that I don't want to forget to bring up with him. The day comes and I'm looking at it and thinking, yeah, this just doesn't feel right to bring up today, but I don't want to forget about it. It's important to me. And so I'm going to save it for another time and then check in with that. Is it still important? Is it still accurate? Is it worth bringing up? Right? Is it still bothering me?
I want to pause right there. I had, for instance, and this wasn't this week, but I had 2 safe space things that are on my list one week. Things during the meeting maybe didn't go as I had planned, or maybe as she had planned. So I said, you know what? Let me just hold on to those 2 for the next time, because I knew that where I was going to go. I'm not out to, whatever. It's not about my needs superseding her needs as well. And recognizing that even if I have something that I really have to get out, could it really wait? Yeah. If you can push it to wait, then do that. I apologize to.
No, great point. And then just some prompts in terms of to-dos, right? So if he's saying, yeah, okay, gosh, could you make the oil change or whatever? Yeah, I got to write it down, right? Because here's one thing that's been really helpful. It doesn't serve us for me to whip out my calendar, start getting on my computer, let me get that web address for you or whatever, because now I'm taking time and energy away from our time. And that's something that technically I can do. And I don't need him to be there for that, right? And it doesn't really support us.
I tried that. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Brandon does not support that. Brandon's not like that.
Can you stop doing that? Because I need your focus. And I realized, hey, she was doing the same thing. I would need that. In that moment, maybe I wasn't, okay, that's not great. But then we would talk about that. And here we are now where it's a flowing system.
So I created a prompt for to-do.
Yeah.
You do that stuff on your own time. No, I'm just kidding. And then notes, just, hey, what do I want to remember? I don't know about you, but I'm always like, oh yeah, that's right. I got to call that person. You think of like 1,000 things as you're doing this meeting, right? It's just a place to kind of document notes. Yeah. So that's a formula that's gone really well for us. And I think after we just feel it's that balance of connectivity. It softens, it takes the charge off a week. It helps us feel like we got this, right? Yeah. And we feel connected and we feel loved and empowered and supported. And there's been times where we're like, oh, that was a little heavy. That was a little hard, but you know what? I love you. And let's do this, right? Like, let's get into our week. And it's empowering.
Yeah.
Would you say the same, honey?
I would absolutely say the same thing. And, again, this is really gradual. And at the end of the day, I feel like I am a guy's guy too. I have my ability, whatever. I am a sensitive guy, but I have those things. Certain things I want to keep brief on. So I don't know how that came up, but it was the idea that some of these things are going to work for me or not, or maybe I'm going to keep them brief or what have you. Being efficient and things like that. But initially, no, that's what I was getting at. When we initially started this, I was hesitant toward these things. I didn't want to talk about every single line item like that. It didn't work for me. It felt really uncomfortable. It felt like, Brandon is really well organized. I would say that I'm organized in a different way. I always joke around. I think it was something from Friends. Let's have some organized fun. Here's my clipboard. Let's talk about it. Ha. Versus my spontaneity. Not to say that she's not spontaneous and I'm not organized. But we share that, and that's how we complement each other.
So shall we call this
episode? That's where she becomes lovely, and that's where I have those moments where, man, she could be serious about something, and I bring in some levity, and that's what softens our moments of, and that's where the virtual strangle came into place. Is that it's okay to say that, it's okay to do that. as long as you don't really do that. So, but
you need to be able to put your own spin on it.
But yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So. I'm just imagining the title for this episode: How Your Everyday Monica and Chandler Thrive as HSPs.
And here's another episode, because I know a lot of people like The Office, but I was thinking about this right before the episode, and our language can sometimes seem a little, I don't want to say it's mechanical, like, oh, this is how we come to speak, and it's very soft, and it's very, sometimes there was an Office episode where I think Jim and Pam were going back and forth and talking about the relationship. I respect how you feel, and I respect how you feel. And there was another guy listening. He said, I don't know what you're on, but can I have some of it? And if I look back on it,
I saw that episode.
Right? So you can kind of put yourself in that spot. I'm like, man, I don't want to sound mechanical. I don't want to sound like, I appreciate your feelings for this. That's how it first felt to me. It felt very, that doesn't feel comfortable to me. I'm a real person. I want to have a real conversation, and that doesn't fit within my whatever. But I realized it's just how things kind of sound to you. If it doesn't sound to you right in your relationship, you're not going to use that. But after a while, it became that. Hey, I appreciate you for this. Hey, I appreciate you for that. Because you know what? At the end of the day, I don't want to not appreciate her for those things. And I think that she would always be lovely in writing these little notes. Hey, thank you for doing this. Hey, thank you for doing that. I want to play catch up on that and let her know that I appreciate her too. Maybe I'm not catching up. Maybe she's 10-1 on my notes. But man, I got to let her know, because I don't want her to feel that she's not being appreciated for all those lovely things that she does.
That is such a beautiful example, Tim, because I think that many of us feel weird or inauthentic, like when we start to use these sentence or frameworks for a different style or ways of communicating. But in reality, at the end of the day, we all need models and frameworks in order to embrace authentically and naturally new ways of communicating or being with one another. So it makes complete sense. And I love that you spoke to this, the idea that it felt weird in the beginning. It felt formulaic. And with practice, it sounds like it became more natural, which I think is just like a beautiful place to kind of wrap it as we end today's conversation. And, I just have been really appreciating this conversation, even while we've been having it, because I think that there are so many of our listeners who will relate with this idea of not wanting to be a roommate with their husband or wife or partner, like not wanting to just be a business partner, but wanting to maintain that fire and that intimacy and that connection. And so I love the two of your willingness, again, to just share the ways in which you have maneuvered that path together and really met each other where you were at and invited each of you to lean in more.
Yeah, thank you.
And I have to thank my sweetie at the end of the day. She got me there thinking about these things. And I never thought I would be in a situation when I first started to be where we are now and how our conversations are like. But it's made our lives a lot easier, and also made my stresses a lot easier. Big time. Mindset, big time.
Yeah, mindset's huge.
Yeah.
If I may add to that, I think that as you were talking, thank you so much for sharing all that, as well as you, honey. A couple of things came to mind as you were talking. I think for the female mind, a lot of times we're just constantly spinning, usually. And so it can be really hard for us to shift out of the masculine energy and into the feminine. And let's say be intimate with your partner and be more playful and fun when you're thinking about, did that get done and this get done and I'm feeling stressed about this. And so by being able to have a space where you can know, basically, I don't have to pepper him throughout the week with 50,000 things, because I know that we're going to have that time protected. And if we're going to have that time protected, then we can tackle some of those just life stuff, right? And then also the important things that come up. So that way his energy doesn't feel drained. We're also still getting stuff done. And then it allows me to be able to show up and be more feminine with him, or in that energy of a feminine energy, where I can be more playful and be intimate. And I'm not thinking about like, are you going to take out the trash? Are you going to do this? And like, and he's like, I just want to kiss you, babe. Like, but it's life, right? And things accumulate. And so there's something to be said for having systems and having some structure, and it's got to look different for everybody. And yeah, you got to find, I remember we even were like, we don't like the word safe space. Like, let's think of something. And we did come up with something. I don't remember what it was. And I'd love to get back to that, but you got to find your own language around it and what feels good for you. And sometimes, like anything new, right? You got to try something and give it a go. And we'll be like this, scratch this, add that in, and there you go. And every couple is different.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, as we wrap, and I'm noticing, we didn't even talk about your businesses, and I will absolutely include your websites and where people can find you in the show notes for today. But I think that that's indicative, right? Because when our relationships work, we work, right? When those relationships that are so primordial and so foundational to our well-being and our success and our self-confidence, when they are empowered and well, it creates this ripple. So I love that we focused here and stayed here, to be honest. But I'd love to end with my final question that I ask all my guests, which is, what has supported you, each, both collectively, in becoming a prosperous empath?
It's been mindset. I just talked about that. It's been putting the positive mindset out there and to the world, putting that out there. And it's almost in some ways, if you look at someone HSP or not, it's goal setting. It's putting that language out into the world and making sure it's going to come back to you. If you're not putting that out there, if you're not putting that positive mindset out there, then what are you doing? And that's been a lot for me. I'll keep mine brief. Mine is positive mindset, positivity, and thinking that, because if it's not, you don't have that intention. And that was part of it. And of course, the relationship. When she's up, I bring her up, and down, and vice versa. We kind of make sure we level each other out, and that's part of it.
Yeah, I appreciate that you brought that up, because I think as empaths, you're picking up on everyone's energy and feelings. And that's huge in a relationship, right? He comes in and he's had a challenge, and it washes over me, right? Now I'm feeling it. And we had to figure that out for sure.
Yeah.
I think for me, we didn't even really get into our stories and how we got here and the discovery and all the things. I guess my short answer is, I would say that for me, what has been basically non-negotiable now is the importance of honoring my self-care. So it's boundaries. It's, I actually do need to eat. I actually really do need that amount of sleep. And I can't rally and do I've had so many pivotal lessons that have come up that have really, the universe really, bringing out that sledgehammer, and the lessons get bigger and bigger. And it's like, and now it's just non-negotiable, and really feeling okay to walk a different path. Okay, that it's going to look like something different, and the universe is going to support me and hold me.
Yeah.
And connecting with other people that understand exactly what I'm talking about. And that's been huge, absolutely huge, because for so much of my life, I have felt like, and all HSPs speak to this, right? I'm to this, I'm to that, I'm not enough of this. And like, where's my space? And feeling safe to be me. And the time that I actually started embracing that and nurturing that, and what does really Brandon need? So yeah, I'm going to bring my damn clipboard to the meetings, and, because it helps me feel organized and structured, and it keeps me on point, and not worrying about that looks weird to somebody else or whatever. I'm only going to pay for it in the end if I don't do that, So that would be my thing.
That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
That was such a big thing. I think I had so much more to say, but that was lovely. It's part
of it too, right?
I mean, I think you just kind of demonstrated the very thing about lifting your partner up and meeting them with the balance. Thank you so much for today, Brandon and Tim. It was such a pleasure. And gosh, there's just so many gems I'm taking from today.
As are we. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
It was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of the Prosperous Empath Podcast with me, Catherine Wood. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review so you don't miss an episode, and so more empaths just like you and me can find the show. As a thank you, each month, one lucky reviewer will receive a 60-minute coaching session with a member of our Unbounded Potential team. You can find all the show notes and bonus resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Thank you so much for listening and locking arms with me to bring empathy and prosperity back into the world of business.